fucked it up, the money coming. Bitch glued up now, look who I'm becoming. These days I can tell I'm running or I'm running. Coming from the block, set it up, get it jumping. Bitch showed up to the flex and the glory. Bitch you great, yeah you know I'm too heroic. Lips ain't slipping if you know it, you know it. Bitch on the wave, couldn't tell you where the boat is. You already know she a real chick. Now she on the road and the road won't stop. Bitch on the road in a brand new drop. You ain't at the top, don't ask where the top. If it's on the low, then it's on the low. I've been on a high, hit a couple notes. Tryna take it slow, I'll take it slow. Gotta keep them close, cause you never know. Whole team up, fucked it up, the money coming. Bitch glued up now, look who I'm becoming. These days I can tell I'm running or I'm running. Coming from the block, set it up, get it jumping. Whole team dripping, know I got it in a maybe. My merch shipping like it's dope in the 80s. Bitch been the one, I'm a legend in the making. I'm in the cut screaming, fuck you niggas pay me. Bitch in the booth, stay strapped. All in your head, play back. All that I do is stay facts. These boots won't chase that. I don't miss any time that I shoot. Niggas get served like they at the drive-thru. Tell them take notes like they at a night school. They be so high, but I'm still a line mood. I rewind, rewind. We need real time, you don't see it, you're too blind. I'm too bad, you too fine. Whole team up, fucked it up, the money coming. Bitch glued up now, look who I'm becoming. These days I can tell I'm running or I'm running. Coming from the block, set it up, get it jumping. Whole team up, fucked it up, the money coming. Bitch glued up now, look who I'm becoming. These days I can tell I'm running or I'm running. Coming from the block, set it up, get it jumping.
Hey Black woman, hey. Welcome to the Black Woman Vibes podcast. Oh yes, this is true. I am your hostess with the mostest. So let's get to toasting. VC name. If this is your first time joining the Black Woman Vibes podcast, here is our mission statement. Black Woman Vibes focuses on empowerment through resourceful, informative guests, data-driven podcast topics, and exclusive subscription services that promote a shared experience of Black Woman Vibes. On today's podcast episode, we will be continuing where we left off in regards to narcissistic fathers are possessive over their daughters. This is the part 2 to the part 1. So within this podcast episode, we will be continuing off obviously where we left off, but also talking about some resources and advice for daughters of narcissistic fathers, especially the untying of your own identity and even possible hang-ups, especially dealing with a narcissistic father who used you as a pseudo trophy or used you as some sort of almost boy, but not really a boy, but my substitute boy for the boy that I've never had. There's a lot of things to unpack within that father-daughter dynamic, and we're going to get into the crux of it in this part 2. So let me not hold you. Let's just jump right into this podcast episode. As a result, daughters of narcissistic fathers can fall into defeatist attitudes about accomplishing goals. They may even go the other route entirely. And develop an excessive perfectionism that develops them to be number one at all costs. Again, they might be the corporate shark. They might be the person that you can't trust, even within relationships. You see this with Wendy Williams when she was having her documentary, whatever. She said that she was not a friend to anybody. Once she had information on you, once she realized that she can use it in her hot topics or she can use it to climb the charts of radio, she had no problem throwing you under the bus. she, a while back, early in her radio career, she was friends with a rapper named Method Man. Method Man and her, I think they even had like a affair. To her knowledge, they had an affair. To his knowledge, they did not, but who knows? Point is that it came out in the wash that his wife had cancer. And Wendy Williams, being a black woman herself, being a woman who's been addicted to drugs and the limelight, and she went through abuse and isolation, people not messing with her, the oddball, being picked on, being bullied, she took the information of this rapper's wife having cancer and exploited it for ratings, putting it out all into the public sphere. And this woman didn't want anybody to know. She was going through her own personal trials and tribulation with cancer, her own insecurities. She didn't want to be treated differently. She didn't even let her close family members know about it. But Wendy took that information and weaponized it. So oftentimes daughters of narcissistic fathers, they turn into the shark their fathers are, because they believe that behavior isn't respected, but it's needed. It's kind of like that tough love. They might even cloak their behavior under tough love. You're being too weak. You're taking it too personal. I'm only just showing you quote unquote tough love. This is how the real world is going to treat you. I'm only just giving you a taste of what the real world is. So they try to, again, validate their toxic behaviors, their low vibrational, predatory, just reprobate behavior. And they'll rationalize it to convey the message that they're always right because, again, they have that God complex. Their drive towards an illusion of perfection can easily turn into an unhealthy obsession that affects their mental health as well as their self-esteem. These are some of the advice the author has for daughters of narcissistic fathers. Get real with yourself about which dreams are yours and which ones are derived from the expectations of your narcissistic father. Did you go to medical school just to please your toxic parent, even though your heart, mind, body, and soul ached to be a musician or artist? Did you abandon your dream of becoming a professional dancer just because your narcissistic father pushed you to go to law school? Make a list of aspirations you were never allowed to pursue due to the influence of your toxic parent, as well as any ideologies or beliefs they imposed on you that you no longer wish to follow. It's never too late to pursue your authentic calling, even if it means re-engaging in your passions on the side. Start to celebrate your accomplishments instead of minimizing them. Daughters of any type of narcissistic parent are used to being criticized at every turn and subjugated to moving goalposts that make pleasing their parents impossible. It's time to start validating what you've accomplished so far in your life, whether it be success in your relationships, career, self-development, or all three. Start recalling the compliments others have given you, and instead of dismissing them, begin to integrate them into your own self-perception. And this is very important because you see this all the time. When people give other people compliments, they'll be like, oh, I love your style. You have such great style. And the person receiving it, let's say the daughter of a narcissistic father, instead of just sitting in that and saying, you know what, thank you. Like, I have this different type of like wardrobe. Maybe I'm a little bit of that hippie vibe, that bohemian hippie vibe, or maybe I'm a little bit like street couture, you know, I like a little bit of color, maybe I like a little bit of sequences, like whatever your thing is, you don't allow that compliment just to hit and sit. You already just taking and bounce it back onto somebody else. So they'll be like, oh my goodness, you have impeccable style. Instead of just taking in that compliment and validating it, you're like, oh, you know, you dress nice too. You have great styles and shoes. And it's like, I don't know if your response was sincere, but even if it was sincere, why couldn't you just sit in the energy of getting that acknowledgement, that accomplishment, that compliment, the spotlight being on you for something that you naturally have? Sometimes daughters of narcissistic fathers, or just narcissistic parents in general, aren't good at taking and receiving compliments, receiving positive reaffirmations, that once they get it, it's like they quickly got to take it away from their table. They got to quickly pass it on to somebody else instead of just sitting in that energy of like, you know what? I really do have great taste. Thank you for noticing that. I do take time into putting my outfits together. I do take certain pieces that I can reinvent in different forms and in different clothing aesthetics. Like, yes, I do have a colorful or a vast style taste. Instead of sitting in the compliment, oftentimes those who were abused as children by narcissistic parents were not used to that type of positive reinforcement, that once we get it, we feel as if like this must have been a mistake. Like, you can't be nice to me. You can't be kind to me. You can't be validating good traits in me because I'm not accustomed to that behavior. It feels awkward to me. It feels weird to me. Maybe you really are a successful person, as your friends say, even though your narcissistic father always berated you for not achieving this or that. Maybe you really are deserving of a healthy relationship, like your counselor told you. Take pride in the things others celebrate in you, and take note of what you are proud of as well. They all come together to cultivate a healthier self-image. So go where you are celebrated and not tolerated. You cannot get better in the same place that made you sick. Period. Release the idea that you have to be perfect in order to be good enough. This is giving me very much moonology teas. If you have the moonology deck, you know, the full moon in Virgo goes, you are good enough. Yes. When you are a daughter of a narcissistic parent, you're always overworking, overdraining yourself, right? You become a workaholic because you're trying to prove that you are good enough. But Spirit already said that you're good enough, period. Consider that there are children who grow up in nourishing and validating family environments where their imperfect selves are still unconditionally loved and respected. Just because we may have had the misfortune to be raised in a different environment does not mean we deserve anything less. Cultivate a sense of being enough just as you are. Use positive affirmations, do self-love and self-compassion meditations such as these on a weekly basis. Develop a healthy, accepting relationship with your inner child. Engage in loving mirror work. This could also be mirror magic. We did discuss this and practice this during the Leo full moon. And we have that ceremony on the Patreon platform, patreon.com/Black Woman Vibes. And connect a sense of faith or sacred spirituality that reminds you of the divine human being you are. Period. You have a right to be cherished, loved, seen, and heard, just like any other imperfect human being in this world. Never equate the narcissistic abuse of a parent with your level of self-worth. You are truly worthy with or without the approval of anyone else. You not only survived narcissistic abuse, you can thrive after it. So to prevent stage 7 generativity versus stagnation, middle adulthood, this is when these daughters of narcissistic abuse reach middle adulthood when they're in their 40s and 50s, more so like late 40s, early 50s, and they realize that they haven't really budged much in life, that they're the same fragmented and distorted little child and a grown person body. Like, they don't really have anything to show for relationships. They may have children, but their relationship with their children is the same pattern of generational trauma through narcissistic abuse. Maybe this child of a narcissistic father grows up to be a narcissist their damn selves, or engages in the victim mentality, the victim frequency as the supply to other narcissists in their lives. But there is some type of like tail spinning and never reaching the point of cutting and clearing the cords of attachment to people who are energy vampires. And of course, this will stagnate these people in stage 8, integrity versus despair, when now they're recounting their lives and seeing they haven't really moved much. They don't really have much success, that they are still the same fragmented and distorted and victimized and hurt child. But now they have more time behind them than in front of them. And all they can do is sit in that energy of shoulda, coulda, woulda. So, of course, this will affect, again, all of this hierarchy of needs, because let's say they are the party animal type. This is going to affect their physiological need, because you can't be a full-time partier and a full-time productive and healthy and prosperous individual. They are polar opposites. So of course, this is going to affect this person's ability for food, water, shelter, sleep, maybe even sex, homeostasis, and clothing, depending on culture and environment. If you're a party girl, but you live in Maine where it's like cold for half the year, you can't be a party girl in the dead of winter. Maybe you can, maybe there'll be clubs open, but will you be able to make sure that you have heat, that you have electricity, that you have the basics to function as a healthy and holistic human being when you're out here just in one high to the next, chasing one high to the next high? Safety, job security, health, resources, functionality. You can't be safe if you're not present, right? Where you're not consciously aware of yourself and the environment around you. And even if, let's say on the other side of the spectrum, where the daughter does have their life together, that they are able to maintain some type of routine, some type of job. And yes, they do have the funds to be a functional person. But just like there's the term functional alcoholic or functional drug addict. Like, yes, you can be functional and dysfunctional at the same time, but the more you indulge in that dysfunction, the more it tends to take over your life. Just like hedonism, right? When you are stuck in trying to be pleased and in that pleasure principle mode all the time, then you need something that is a bigger high, or something that's even more of a risk-taking behavior. You need something that pushes the needle, that pushes the edge. So eventually these negative behaviors overpower and overtake your routine that gives you grounding, that gives you ability to have awareness and accountability. That will be wiped off from the table, and you will literally be dancing on the table, or high on the table, or just out of your mind, body, and soul on the table. Unfortunately, as I said that, I really did just see in my head someone on the table, like a toe tag. Love and belonging needs, friendship, intimacy, platonic, romantic, sexual, whatever side of the spectrum daughters of narcissistic fathers are, this will be affected regardless. Either, again, this person repels intimate relationships. They keep to themselves. They're kind of like a cat lady. They can go missing and people would not notice them. Or they're on the other side where they're chasing validation. They're chasing love. They want to be a part of the crew. They are using their bodies in transactional ways that does not benefit them. They think that they can use sex to gain love, but all they do is gain emptiness, and they feel used at the end of the transaction. Esteem. Their esteem is very shallow, very much of that basic energy, very much of that surface level energy. They're a person who feels as if they've made it, or they have worth via what's on their bodies, i.e. brand names versus designer names. They feel as if they've made it if they can be in the same space with people who have this type of title or this type of accomplishment. They only feel secure via what's outside of them and not what's in them. They're very hollow. They are an empty vessel themselves. So they're looking for other people to pour into them. So they always are like, I'm associated with this person. My value comes through proximity of being with that person. Very much of that leech energy, because they need someone else to validate them. But the people that they're latching onto are stealing them of their solar plexus, because the only way that they can be around these particular people is if they play the doormat position. They play the second best position. They play the chaser to the runner, where they're anxious, where they're vying for this person's attention, where they're chasing the goalpost, where they are engaging in low morality and low vibrational engagements just so they can be seen as cool or with it or hip or whatever. So they don't have true self-worth, self-love, self-respect, confidence, achievements. They don't overcome challenges. They either commit defeat, they have a defeatist mindset, and then they internalize their defeat with bad behavior such as suicide ideations, cutting themselves, pulling out their hair, scarification, and things of that nature. Or once they get into a tizzy, they get into some type of challenge, they totally flip their shit. They get upset, they get violent, they get volatile, they break down, they cry, they have tantrums like toddlers. And they don't really have respect for other people, especially people who have authority, or they don't receive respect from the community at large because people see them as a snake, someone that cannot be trusted, someone who has malicious intent, someone who's always looking to upstage the next person. So it's not a good energy to be in. People don't trust you and you don't trust them. Self-actualization, morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, lack of prejudices, accepting of facts, especially when they conflict with beliefs. These people do not have self-actualization. If you cannot accurately assess yourself, then how can you accurately assess anything around you? So with these particular people, their morality is based off of what they get out of it, which is not necessarily bad, because I do not believe that anybody should just be giving all of themselves for free just for the heck of it. But also with these particular people, it's not the difference between standards and self-respect. It's more so about the clout, the attention, the who, what, when, where, how. So for example, this person might be like, under no circumstances would I, let's say, rob somebody. But if you change the narrative and was like, okay, well, this person has a safe, this person has designer bags, like this person has everything that you could possibly want. Now, are you okay with robbing? Then the person's like, well, you know what? Change of plans on second thought. Like their morality is based on what's in it for them, versus their morality is a rooted and stable type of energy, regardless of who, what, when, where, why. What I said is what I say. With people who have not self-actualized, their morality is based on whatever is on the table. Make the price, make the sale, make the offer juicy enough, then their morality will be swayed to the left or to the right. These people are not creative. They recycle the same experiences, the same people. Again, these are the type of people who run into the same entity in different bodies, that demonic narcissistic energy, and they are not able to make those connections. They're not able to connect the dots because they lack that intuitiveness. Their third eye chakra is totally blocked. Their crown chakra is blocked. So they'll see the same traits, the same red flags over and over again, and are not able to understand that gut feeling, that intuition, the blank stare, the cruelty, like all of that is defined by narcissism. They will not be able to understand that and accept that because it conflicts with their own personal beliefs, as well as they're not able to see like this is a pattern of behavior. Because if they were able to see the pattern and behaviors of these people with this dark entity, then they would be able to see the behavior traits within self as playing the victim role. Spontaneity, again, with the spontaneity, it's either too wild, too freaky, too much of that windy, want to be seen, want to be heard, communicating fast, crash energy. Or it's, I have to stick to the routine. I have to play this role. I have to live in a box. I cannot be my authentic self. I'm used to wearing a mask type of energy. Both energies are chaotic for different reasons. One energy is chaotic because it's not grounded in anything of substance. And the other energy is chaotic because they're literally allowing life to pass them by. They're existing in life, but they're not really participating. It's like they're on the sidelines of life, because they don't feel confident or important enough to play the game of life. They can't problem solve. So again, they're always creating more problems within their own lives, or they're avoiding problems by acting like they're not there as they amount to bigger heaps of issues, bigger heaps of problems. It's kind of like a pyramid scheme. Like the people at the bottom are obviously fucked, but the people at the top are making good money. And because the people at the top can floss and front as if the investment is a good investment, people don't see the majority, kind of like the iceberg. You only see the tip. You don't see the bottom of it, the bigger portion that will crash your ship. People don't see the people at the bottom level, the majority who are funding the lifestyle of the people at the top. And if you did see it, you would realize that it is a scam, a pyramid scam. The same thing can be applied to self-actualization in the bullet point of problem solving. These people do not solve their own problems. They just compile more problems onto another problem, or they put a band-aid on the issue and avoid the core issue at hand. This gives me very much social media escapism, right? You say a couple of affirmations, you get yourself a couple of crystals, you join a hate group, whether it's incels or Black woman MGTOW, and you stay in your little realms, you stay in your little toxic, hurt, and fragile, and discarded and rejected placement on the internet, and you create this beehive mentality, this hive mind mentality of rejection, of hurt, of pain, of anger, of this and that, and you feel validated. You feel like this is a support group, this is needed, this is this and the third, not realizing that you are just rehashing the same expired script of victimhood and not really getting to the core crux of the issue. You're just a group of hurt, unhinged individuals, but not seeing why that is and why you should do better by doing that shadow work, that introspective work. And again, when things don't match up with the facts that the daughter of the narcissistic father accepts as truth, then it's either they're going to have a personality clash, a mental breakdown, a tower moment where it's like, oh shit, now that I see this for that, now I have to change my perception. It's either that they're going to avoid the tower moment by trying to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome, or they're going to deny the fact that things have changed, there's new information in the midst, or they are going to avoid actually integrating that information. So again, it's going to be a situation where they are permanently going to push themselves into the ignorant category because they don't want to change their behavior pattern, but be upset at the outcome being the same old, or they are going to completely deconstruct once the new information is in front of them and they do have a tower moment and they do have to pick up the pieces after knowing the truth has been changed. The truth has a different image now. When it comes to the chakras, all the chakras are in balance. Root chakra, sacral chakra, solar plexus chakra, heart chakra, throat chakra, third eye chakra, crown chakra. Especially with the crown chakra, if they're not able to see how all of this intermingles, how this all interacts, they're more likely to repeat the same toxic cycles over and over and over again, and not understanding how this all interlaps, how this all relates to one another. Is like literally not being able to see your own reflection, sitting in front of the mirror and not seeing anything. With the crown chakra, they're very much easily manipulated, naive, gullible. Like this is the type of person who will look up one year and realize that they have let life pass them by and they just cannot even recount for what they've done with their life and their time, right? It's a person who cannot tap into higher levels of understanding and that introspective work, that empathy for self, that self-love, that protection, that gift of discernment, creating healthy boundaries, using the actuals and factuals, sitting and meditating, trying to piece the puzzles together, getting the synchronicities of life, tapping into source, tapping into familiar connections with their higher vibrational ancestors. Like there's nothing like that. They're very much surface level 3D. So these are So, as I do with all of my two-parters, it seems, but with the podcast episodes in regards to narcissistic abuse, I'm going to give you my own assessment of what will happen to daughters of narcissistic fathers if they choose to take their life into their own hands and do that cutting and clearing work, that shadow work, that psychological I am in therapy work, or what is the other possible outcome if they do not do that cutting and clearing work. So if you would like to show your gratitude via donation, you can always hit me up either on Cash App, $ Black Woman Vibes, or Venmo, Black Woman Vibes, woman with an A, not an E, because it's only me, she, her, we. Now back to your regular scheduled broadcast, and I hope you enjoy. Daughters of narcissistic fathers need to commit an ego death of their father's aggrandized image of self. The narcissistic father lives to enact patriarchal abuses under the guise of father knows best. Many narcissistic fathers of daughters see their daughters as an extension of the narcissistic father and as property like pre-women's rights era. Narcissistic fathers see women like cattle, and they psychologically brand their daughters as their keepers. So the narcissistic father brands himself as his daughter's keeper, literally. Oftentimes, this possessiveness is not only toxic, but it restricts the narcissistic father's daughter's agency. So the daughter does not have control over herself. No autonomy whatsoever, where she second guesses herself and inherits the low vibrational overcritical voice of their narcissistic fathers. So the voice in their head is the tone and the frequency of their narcissistic fathers over criticizing them, thus leading daughters of narcissistic fathers into self-sabotage when she works against her best benefit to validate her perpetual victim script that her narcissistic father reinforced into her as a child, that she's not good enough, she's not smart enough, she's not capable enough, and therefore that's why he has to have dominion over her. Analysis paralysis. When the daughter of a narcissistic father is so caught up in her own head and is constantly in a tailspin of shoulda, woulda, coulda, and never is able to make a choice by her own free will with full confidence without doubting herself. The tail spinning is to stall time so someone else can receive the responsibility for making a decision for her, because narcissistic father always did, because he crippled her agency and a sense of healthy self-esteem and confidence. Meaning, don't worry about making a decision because daddy got you. Daddy always got you. Daddy's a man and daddy's your daddy. So daddy obviously has more insight, more intelligence, just knows everything better than you. Therefore, that's why he has to bestow himself as your guardian. It's easier to control someone that way. No different than Britney Spears' father over Britney Spears' estate. Hence the hashtag Free Britney. Or imposter syndrome, when she runs on anxiety, her heart pacing at the speed of light because she never thinks good things are supposed to happen to her. She plays remedial to shy herself away from the spotlight even when she deserves it. And when good things do happen to her, she feels as if it's a mistake, that she doesn't deserve those good things, that she'll be founded to be a fraud and be uncovered by the general public who once believed that she deserved these good things. She's literally a glutton for misery because a narcissistic father created the narrative of the daughter not quite good enough, that she could always improve in some aspect. This can develop into perfectionism obsessive compulsive disorder, self-harm, drug addiction, suicide ideation, etc. For daughters of narcissistic fathers to get the healing and take charge confidence that she lacks, she must confront the truth of who her father is and who her father is not. Hence the ego death of turning the God complex megalomaniac back into a mere mortal is to accept his flaws, that he is flawed with narcissism. Understand that the behavioral traits and the lack of emotional availability is part of the narcissistic personality disorder and not a result of her own doing, will allow daughters of narcissistic fathers to accept their authenticity, not as a poster child for anyone, not someone's property, and not someone's empty vessel to recapture the faded youth, will help the daughter of narcissistic fathers to understand it's okay to be their authentic self, as perfectly flawed as everyone else. So the daughter must see the father for being the fragile, immature, misogynistic, megalomaniac, fragility, toxic masculine, etc., that he is, and not this benevolent, all-seeing, omnipresent being that he has portrayed himself to be. Once the daughter can deflate the father's ego and seeing the father for who he is, she can see herself for who she is, that she is just as flawed as he is, maybe not to the point of a personality disorder, but nonetheless, she doesn't have to be this trope to please her father when her father isn't all that he's cracked up to seemingly be, at least on the surface level. When she can kill the aggrandized image of the father, then she can kill the victimhood script within self. Because daughters see their fathers as the prototype to their future partner, they will select as an adult. Many times, daughters underestimate their father's jealousy or negative character traits as fathers being fathers, no different than boys will be boys. As society portrays this entitlement of the father as normal for a narcissistic father, it only validates their narcissistic behaviors as normal. Narcissistic fathers who see their daughters as their possession habitually overstep their father-daughter boundaries and turn their daughters into pseudo-lovers of a non-platonic level. So romantically, at least on a psychological and emotional level. Movies such as Eve's Bayou depict fathers who become incestuously engaged with their daughters psychologically and emotionally, also known as grooming, then take their ill-intent, sadistic, predatory grooming tactics into a sexual lane. So they start off grooming their daughters psychologically and emotionally, and once they feel as if the daughter is codependent, isn't attached, and see the father in a weird lover lane, then they introduce it and taking it to a more insidious lane of sexual abuse. These sexual predator narcissistic fathers create friction between the mother and or wife and the daughter to capture the jealous gaze of both parties. The father may share inappropriate, unflattering, or exaggerated details the child's mother and or wife to garner sympathy from his daughter that he's grooming and planting the seeds of discord and to create a secret relationship just between the father and the daughter. Programming into the daughter that she belongs to him. He would rather have a wife and or child's mother who love him, understands him, appreciates him like the daughter, telling the daughter she could be a better wife or a better baby's mother or child's mother than the one that he currently has. So pinning that daughter against her own mother or his wife so she can feel like she is better at being wifely than her own mother or his wife. Kind of like the Opidio complex, but this time it's more so the father and daughter aspect. He creates a trauma bond and sexually exploits it from a us, meaning narcissistic father and daughter, versus her, meaning the child's mother or his wife, the quote unquote other woman. This distorted, incestuously misogynistic point of contention will only explode with chaos energy. This type of narcissistic father values his daughters as his personal secret lovers and dictates who she can date, communicate with, and even engage with sexually. Narcissistic fathers who live up to these levels of control are domineering and also violent, threatening to harm the daughter and or any man he feels threatened by who've captured the gaze of his daughter. The narcissistic father's enema complex is that he wants his daughter for himself. And if the daughter threatens to break traditional gender roles, i.e. presents as a butch lesbian or more masculine or gender fluid, the father will try to bully his daughter out of presenting more masculine or more fluid. He will double down on the idea that women should be in the kitchen and that women should wear dresses and that women should be second-class citizen to men. This type of toxic father who is a narcissist sees his daughters as one of three tropes as his multiple best little trophy wife that he was not able to gain in the real world, meaning that the daughter is here to be his secret lover or his emotional and psychological wife. We saw this energy T.I. had for his daughter Deja when he went on a podcast claiming that he took his daughter for a hymen check, that he was all up in her vagina, and said that as some type of badge of honor, or said that as some type of like, yeah, I'm doing my daddy due diligence. And social media and just anybody with two brain cells really dragged him, really showed him his misogynoir and chauvinism as he tried to walk back his conversation and redefine the context of hymen check, like he was on the verge of being canceled by those who still listen to Mr. TIP. But nonetheless, that just shows you how entitled these fathers feel to their daughters. And even Deja hinted at being unprotected as a child and possibly experiencing some form of sexual misconduct as a child. The other trope is as fill in the blank for a boy child, meaning that the daughter is supposed to fulfill that narcissistic father's need of always wanting a son. So now she owns the placement of a pseudo son, a pseudo boy. She's almost as good as the boys, but not quite a boy role in the narcissistic father's life. And the third trope is as the bane of his existence. If the daughter of a narcissistic father is completely the opposite of who he is and what he believes, in particular when it comes down to sexual orientation, narcissistic fathers will find a way to break the ego and confidence of his daughter, not only because she's a threat to his control and gender normality, but also he is threatened by the confidence and agency that the daughter has, which means that she is a free thinker. She is able to block his narcissistic psychological attacks. To break her and gain the upper hand is to reaffirm his control over his family by quote unquote putting her in her place publicly. This narcissistic father needs validation by breaking the soul and aspirations of women. In their toxic narcissistic minds, they need to feel domineering over women because women, quote unquote, don't know their place and often, quote unquote, step out of line. Therefore, narcissistic fathers need to be men who, quote unquote, break women into obedience and into submission, reaffirming patriarchal violence towards women, particularly if this narcissistic father believes in or leans into using religious beliefs, especially those Abrahamic three branches, Christianity, Islamic, and Judaism, to confirm his toxic masculinity. These type of narcissistic fathers tend to really believe in Eve is the reason why women and humankind is dysfunctional, as well as you cannot trust women because women are Jezebel spirits. So they really hate the feminine aspect of women unless they can abuse it, exploit it, or prey on it, essentially. These types of narcissistic fathers are heavily traditionally toxic masculinity with a generous side of male fragility sprinkled with misogyny and sexism for flavoring, and believes it is women who are supposed to not only serve this plate of shadow projections from a historical institution of patriarchy, but the women should be excited to cook this poison and eat the leftovers when the men reach gut-busting levels. And in the grand scheme of things, are still expected to bring something to the table, even though they are the ones who are usually propping up the table with their backs, might I add, cleaning the table and serving the meals on the table, because women are not people. Women are mules and an extension of the male ego. These narcissistic fathers treat women like second-class citizens and even, quote unquote, joke about selling his daughter into marriage or remark that women are breeders and nothing more. To live an abundant and trauma-free life, daughters of narcissistic fathers need to cut and clear those cords of attachment, especially if they have experienced sexual abuse from said narcissistic father. The best option is to go no contact and deep therapy with a therapist that is qualified in family therapy and or sexual abuse and or incest or anything in particular to those categories. If the daughter of narcissistic fathers had not experienced sexual abuse, but has experienced toxic masculinity and misogyny due to their father's tyrannical tirades, go no contact is the best option. However, gray matter is also a good second best, where you keep your conversation short, surface level, emotionless, and monotonous. This way, there's still a line of communication open, but it has a weak heartbeat. The narcissistic father will lose the attachment over their daughter's life, and the critical inside voice inside her head will minimize in volume. I know that was a mouthful, so you might want to replay that particular portion. But nonetheless, the point is you can undo all these entanglements, the Charlotte's Web of fuckery dealing with narcissistic abuse, but you have to label it and claim it for what it is to be able to deal with that. Because oftentimes we'll just say it's a generational thing, or we are immigrants, or it's just the culture, when in actuality it's toxic, it's generational curses, it's nefarious, it's low vibrational, it's sadistic, it's predatory, it's harmful. We cannot just sweep these things underneath the rug by saying, well, people are people. It's a different time. It's a different generation. They didn't mean it, because your hurt is very real and you have to acknowledge that. The pain is really real and that needs to be acknowledged. The denigration, the overcritical, the self-sabotage, the paralysis analysis, the imposter syndrome, all of those things are very much real. And they are side effects because of dealing with a narcissistic parent, particularly the narcissistic father. So to understand how those two coexist, because one is the causation and the other is the correlation, then you're able to see how the father inflicted their harm onto you and how you can heal from those harms, but you have to name it and claim it for what it is. Correct? How are you going to get healing in the same place that made you sick and you don't even notice that all types of viruses are in the air, but you breathing with no mask on? Like, come on. The way narcissistic men see women, but honestly, under the umbrella of patriarchy, all men to various degrees feel and think the same way about women and girls. And children, particularly girl children, because girl children will become women as adults, whereas boy children will become men and continue the toxic cycle of patriarchy, owning women and children until the boy becomes a man and then he can repeat the cycle, whereas girls and women are perpetually in a cycle of being bought and discarded and bought and discarded. Maiden, mother, crone, under the patriarchal eye. As I will always mention, because I've done therapy before and I am an advocate for therapy, the only way to really do that shadow work is, yes, mirror magic helps, and yes, support groups help, and yes, having extra added benefits of content that helps you face your shadow, realign your chakras, do that cutting and clearing of cords of attachment like I offer on my Patreon page, patreon.com/blackwomanvibes, is very important as added support. But that psychoanalyzing, that's therapeutic work, and maybe even psychiatric help if it really does affect your day-to-day cycle, your day-to-day routine. There's nothing wrong with medication at all either. But what I will say, to start off, you definitely need to book your therapy session. Check in with your insurance, check in with your local community centers. If you don't have insurance, there's other ways to get around and get the needs that you want, but you have to be a person who's willing to accept the process and be willing to make those changes where you see fit. Therapy is not a quick fix. It's not something that is done within a few days, a few weeks. Some people are in therapy for months, some for years. However the process works for you, it works for you in your own due time. But to really get a grasp and a hold on your own life as a person who's confident, as a person who's self-assured and ready to make the decisions and ready to take the captain seat of their own life, therapy is the best way to go about it, especially if you have been dealing with this for years, of this type of narcissistic brew, this type of narcissistic demonic energy. In closing, thank you to the listeners for tuning in. You can find the Black Woman Vibes podcast on Facebook page, Black Woman Vibes, Instagram, Black Woman Vibes, Twitter, Black Woman Vibes, YouTube channel, Black Woman Vibes. Please like, follow, and share content. And don't forget to join the tribe of Black Woman Vibes. Also head over to Facebook and Patreon to join the exclusive tribe and get access to content from members of Black Woman Vibes. On Patreon is where we openly have conversations behind the scenes that helps us as sisters grow and level up. Each one teaches us all, from live streams, advisor emails, speaking engagements, and consultation services. All can be found on Black Woman Vibes, Patreon, and Facebook. Isn't it time for Black women to live and to live well? Be the best version of yourself by mastering yourself. I'll be back next Wednesday for a new episode of Black Woman Vibes. With all that being said, be blessed, be enlightened, be loved. I am your hostess with the mostest. So let's get to toasting. VCNA, logging off. Peace.